shouldn't be that way. However, it's my fault. I got so irritated with the singing of the national anthem last night on Channel 8 that I called off the 4th of July. And I was preparing my lesson, and obviously I hit the wrong button somewhere along the way. It always kills me when soloists decide to do something with the anthem that's not part of its. I mean, this woman went up so high and came down and then went up again. I never figured out. However, I changed channels and went over to hear Clint Black. His voice, however, is old. It was better than the soloist, but it was old. So I said, well, she has to have finished. And I watched Clint for a long time. Then I went back to Channel 8, and they had started over, and she was singing again. It was at that point that I probably blew today's lesson. It's here, somewhere, but it isn't available. And I'm sorry for that. But I do remember it. We're talking about sacramental prayer today. One of the things that poses a problem for the church is liturgy, the liturgical prayers that used to be in our worship service. And I say it poses a problem because over the years we became too familiar with the liturgy to appreciate its beauty. Isn't that the way we do it? It's supposed to be July 5, 15, but there are two of them in there. One of them goes nowhere. Good luck. Paul Snyder runs our TV studio back there and does a super job, in producing, well, the videos that you would have seen today, showing them actually. I don't think he produced them, but he made them work. As a matter of fact, at 11, the TV audience will see something that the congregation will not see. The congregation will see something that the TV audience will not see. And that's phenomenal, to run two videos at the same time. It's a problem.
Oh, hang on. I got something over here.
Okay.
Got a little help from the devil.
Yeah, it works that way.
Hang on, I'll get it. Sorry, guys.
Hey, don't overcommit. We'll see. When you get into this idea of sacramental prayer, and you use liturgies to help you form the framework of what you want to focus on. For example, the liturgies, the words that have been coming down to us for centuries, are words which are built upon what work. Huh? Okay, be cocky.
Happy to help. Sorry I was late.
This is not the lesson, but it's okay. That's all right, Paul. You did good.
Okay.
Have a donut. He brings a dozen donuts to the TV room every Sunday, and I stop by every Sunday, so I know where I speak. If we are, oh my, here we go. John Wesley said, what we need is a desire to know the whole will of God with a fixed resolution to do it. John Wesley had a fixed resolution to perform the Word of God, And he, of course, was quite effective. The growth of the church in the United States in the days of Wesley was attributable to John Wesley and those missionaries who came to America. My heart is steadfast, O God, my heart is steadfast. This is one of the Psalms. I will sing and make melody. Awake my soul. Awake, O harp and lyre. I will awake the dawn. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing praises to you among the nations. For your steadfast love is as high as the heavens. Your faithfulness extends to the clouds. Wonderful psalm. A number of years ago, I suggested to the Thursday Bible study that it would be a wonderful thing if everybody wrote a song. Nobody did. I think maybe one person did, and I've lost it. But the point was, if you can focus your mind on the attributes of God and put them in a format that causes you to remember those, then you've taken a step of becoming far more familiar with the Creator than you were before you started this process. Covenant prayer requires a commitment from the participant that has great rewards but is difficult to keep. Today's society, we always talk about nobody wants to accept responsibility. Well, that comes from the idea that commitment assumes responsibility, and we avoid commitment. We avoid responsibility. Not everybody. I don't mean to group all of you with me. You understand that in today's society, people, one after the other, in the arena of sports, in the arena of politics, assume no responsibility for their actions, for their positions. In fact, the position today may be a different position tomorrow, depending on what audience is being talked to. So responsibility becomes an issue. Commitment, therefore, is hand in glove with responsibility. Commitment restricts freedom. Commitment means responsibility, and responsibility sounds confining. There's a tendency today to define freedom as the complete absence of restraint. Would you agree with that?
No.
Yes.
You would not?
No.
Why?
Well, I don't think freedom is the absence of restraint.
I agree.
My freedom stops when your freedom starts.
Okay, but you disagree with the tendency to define?
No, I agree people are like that, but...
Then what are we arguing about? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were my wife.
I was arguing with you.
Yeah, I was always taught that actually in democracy, the individual has to take greater responsibility.
There is no question about that. The individual should take greater
You
responsibility.
have the strong man, total, dictator, that's when you have absence.
All right. Absolute freedom is utterly ludicrous. Oh. A person cannot improve without commitment, and thus restraints. Demosthenes became a great orator only because he went through the discipline of speaking above the roar of the oceans with his mouth full of pebbles. George Frederick Handel could compose Messiah only because he studied musical composition.
No.
No? Somebody said no over here. What is it with you people today? Just because you celebrated the 4th yesterday doesn't mean you can do that today. We avoid commitment because it will take all the spontaneity and joy out of our lives. Will it? No. That's 3 out of 3. Prayer requires commitment, but we fear that it will only become compulsory exercises rather than free will offerings. Okay. Dietrich Bonhoeffer stated that prayer is not a free will offering to God, but it is an obligatory service, something he requires. Commitments looked at from the wrong perspective cause us to go through life with clenched teeth. Okay, I'm glad you agree. You're the only two in the place that agree.
They're all wrong.
That's all right. I'm surprised so many of you are here today.
They had a commitment to come.
Thank you. Obligatory. Yeah, right. Another reason we fear commitment is our fear that we can't keep what we commit.
That's true.
That's true. Okay. The demands upon our time are so great, we believe that we don't have time to pray and meditate. But where does the idea of prayer come from in the first place? A.W. Tozer wrote, "We pursue God because and only because He first put an urge within us that spurs us to the pursuit." You have heard many, many times that the spark, the life, that ember that burns within you that causes you to think about God was put there for a purpose by God. And that's what Tozer is trying to tell us. The fascinating thing is that experiences with God only serve to heighten the pursuit of the relationship. We really do have time to continue the pursuit of God as He continues our pursuit. Obedience begets obedience. Just as we learn to sin, so can we learn obedience. In covenant prayer, there are several requirements. The covenant of time, the covenant of place, the covenant of heart preparation. Time. We will never have time for prayer. We have to make time. Remember the ingredients of a covenant. The Bible recounts numerous covenants between God and others. Note, the covenants were initiated by God. God spoke to Abraham and set in motion the creation of many nations. He spoke to Moses and freed a people. Study those covenants. They're one-sided. So, Saul, why do you persecute me? Now, this is when I was getting upset with the national anthem, and I couldn't control the color of the slide. I apologize. I don't even know who sang it. Saul, why do you persecute me? He asked. Who are you, Lord? The reply came, I'm Jesus whom you were persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what you are to do. God initiated, Jesus initiated the covenant relationship. Does Saul have a choice? I don't think so. I'm sure if you were spoken to on the road to Damascus as he was, in the manner in which he was, you wouldn't have had a choice either. And he said to them, follow me and I will make you fish for people. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Did they have a choice? The text would tell us they didn't. The underlying Greek would be an imperative that says, you guys are going to do what you're told. In other words, the covenant was initiated by Jesus. It began with Jesus. Yeah, you're right. That's when I wiped out the singer. How did you know? Yeah, I wish I knew it was. When we covenant with God about prayer, we are the initiator. God doesn't grab us by the collar and say, pray. Instead, we approach God. We become the initiator of the covenant. That's critical for us to understand that when we assume that obligation, it carries with it some additional obligations. God doesn't say to us that we pray to Him. If we pray to Him, He will bless us abundantly. It doesn't say that. Rather, Jesus taught the simplicity of prayer and emphasized that God knows what we need before we ask. So why pray? If we recognize that the desire to know God comes from beyond us, shouldn't we do whatever is necessary to strengthen our relationship with Him? Now think about that for a minute. Where do you get the idea of God? If you had never heard a preacher, if you had not experienced people, would you have an idea of God? What did Paul say? Paul said you just look at creation and you know there's a God. You just look at the magnificence of it and you know that there's a God. In other words, your knowledge of God comes from beyond you. And the initiation of prayer comes from beyond you. You with me? What happened to those dissidents? And it scares me that 100, how many people looked at our videos?
142.
100 and what?
142.
142. We just lost one. That's all right. I'm kidding. Remember that we are initiating the covenant, and our commitment of time should be responsible and keepable. Some folks on our staff talk of daily devotions and prayer time every morning, and I applaud them for that. But I can't do that. And so I can't make that commitment. Now, that's probably, let me tell you, I've tried, but I just can't seem to get the time right every day. So I have a covenant about prayer, which is not every day. Now, in that respect, I do something that may be called prayer. It's called breath prayers. Not in a formal kind of thing in which you've praised God and all of that. Instead, the breath prayer is, bless this person. Be with that person. Heal that person. It's just a simple, right. I actually express the thought rather than just think the thought when I'm in the car. I do two things. I'm either yelling at a driver or I'm doing breath prayers. And I confess that. I have, but commit what can be kept. If you covenant with God concerning prayer and meditation, it does not have to be a daily obligation. It can be weekly, even just on Saturday mornings, as long as it is a time when you converse with God on a regular basis. That's important. Okay, this is when I went back. This is amazing. I went back to see if the woman had finished, and she hadn't. We know that time does not magically appear. We have to create space in our day for God. Remember, as you do that, we don't have to answer the phone. When you begin meditation in prayer, numerous things are going to interrupt you. The phone, a knock on the door, doorbell, your pen will run out of ink, if you have a pen. You will suddenly remember something that you've left undone for years. In that split second, you will alone decide whether you keep your covenant. I used to have a cat named Spider. I didn't have a cat. My youngest son had a cat named Spider that some girl talked him into bringing home from Kincaid because the cat had lived under the building And so Michael felt sorry for it and brought it home, and Spider became an addition to our menagerie. Spider didn't have any front claws, which is a bad thing to do to cats. But Spider could still climb the curtains with its back claws. And it did that regularly, but only when I was preparing my Sunday school lesson. Spider would run up, I would stop, Spider would come down, I'd resume, Spider would run up. I felt sorry for Spider. It lived much too long, but it lived, look, I shouldn't put it that way. It was okay when it died. What?
Down came the rain and washed
It washed the Spider out. Well, I shouldn't confess to that. But, Spider lived under the bed. She was either climbing the curtains or living under the bed. The other cats in our menagerie didn't like Spider. And thus, Spider lived under the bed. Under my bed. Well, Spider proved to be a problem, but my point is, when you make a covenant and you're deciding that you're going to pray to God at a specific time, you find things that interrupt you. Someone would tell you that might be the devil, and it might be. Because once you're interrupted, you have to get back together in order to keep your covenant. So, covenant of time, the covenant of place. Most of us, I shouldn't say most of us, most of me, have a place in which I meditate or pray. And I would recommend that to you. The Bible tells you to go in your closet, close the door, and pray to your Father who's in secret. And He, who sees in secret, will reward you openly. But most of us, maybe you have, a special place. You should have a special place. Some people have a praying altar in their house. I'm not sure that many Christians do that anymore, but I'm not sure about that. It seems to me that once you've built a place, you're obligated more than just saying I covenant, you're obligated to participate in prayer because you have built a special place. So, the covenant of place. Part of the success in keeping a covenant is to think through everything that could provide a distraction. Eliminate those things and do not allow a disruption of your place of prayer. Anything that would prevent your prayers. Richard Foster, who's written the book that I'm using, writes about having picked a place in his yard, behind the garage. And he would go out there every day to pray that the weather allowed. If it rained, he retreated to his closet. My chief joy is to escape to the attic of the garden house and the little broken window that looks out over the valley. There, in the silence, I love the green grass. The tortured gestures of the apple trees have become part of my prayer. So much do I love this solitude that when I walk along the road to the old barns that stand alone, far from the new buildings, delight begins to overpower me from head to foot, and peace smiles even in the marrow of my bones. That's what Thomas Merton wrote about his covenant place. I'd love to have been there. I think that what he's written is really wonderful. I have never lived in a place like that. I might have vacationed in a place that had special meaning, but I can't remember it. So, then we have the covenant of heart preparation. Richard Baxter tells us we have to have the fittest preparation of heart. Meet God without inhibition. Come in silence. Sit in silence. Wait for God. Read the Psalms. Read other meditations. Then pray. It's not hard to honor this time with God. So what is this about today? Covenant prayer, which I call sacramental prayer to start with. Covenant prayer requires an effort on the part of the person who has initiated the question of praying. Time, place, and preparation of the mind and heart in order to pray effectively. One of the most difficult things today is to sit in silence. Think about that. Whatever you got in your pocket goes off, or it vibrates. It leaves you a text message which you bother to read and then think, oh, I've got to answer that message, even though it's asking you about something that you're supposed to do in 5 days. You worry about it. The distraction creates an inability to effectively communicate with God. Does it not? The phone rings, not the cell phone. The phone at home, if you have one still. Do you have to answer it? Ours gives us a message. It says, unknown. Always says unknown. And then gives us a number, which is not known. Or the voice doesn't realize that it's George Smith calling. It says, George Smith, call. Never finishes. This is just the idiosyncrasy of this Japanese phone. But you could phone, and I wouldn't know it because it would have given your last name as call or calling. Anyway, that's my problem. My point is, get away from it. And go in a room where that doesn't happen. Go in a room where you don't have on the television. Mute the television. One of the great joys of yesterday was to mute that woman that was singing the Anasquan. And I did. What? I can't nuke it. No, I can mute it. I'd like to nuke it, but I can only mute it. Boy, this is going to be a tape. We've got 150 people watching. You get the point? What are we trying to do when we initiate a covenant with God? We initiated it. He didn't. He didn't say pray. We said, we're going to pray to you every day at 10 o'clock, or we're going to pray to you every Sunday morning. We're going to pray to you on Saturday night. We said it. We set the rules. Therefore, we have to eliminate the distractions that prevent us from keeping our covenant. Isn't that what life is all about anyway? Don't we keep covenants to our family, to our friends, and to our church that become more serious and more kept than our covenant with God to talk to Him? Do we do that? Am I just fussing for nothing?
That's true.
Am I fussing for nothing?
No.
Thank you so much. I felt I was fussing for nothing. The covenant relationship with God is critical if we're going to learn to pray effectively and if we're going to learn to draw closer to Him. If you have, for example, not a relationship that puts you in a position of closeness with the Father, then when you have a serious issue in your life, the sickness of a spouse, or the injury of a son, or the death of something than picking up and trying to put the covenant together, then it doesn't work so well. Your prayer becomes desperation, but you have a communicable relationship with God the Father. And I am convinced that prayer, above anything else we do, is the most important thing that we do. It's certainly more important than coming here and abusing me. I'm kidding. Do you have any questions? Do you see where I've gone today? I'm amazed that we went anywhere, considering the way we got started. That was that singer's fault.
Well, what I would like to know, Alan,
Yes.
I know it's not an answerable question, but I find I have my prayer time in the morning, same time, but some days I could pray copious prayers and just thankful. Then other days I have a hard time. And why do we have a hard time?
Well, I would make you a bet that in various relationships in your life, you've had great high moments, and then it's the same person, but it's very hard to feel close to. And what's the explanation? We don't know always why. We don't know why sometimes God doesn't talk to us. And other times, those of you who have experienced a prayer relationship with God, oh, wow, He's there. And I think some days He decides to go off and do whatever He wants to do because we don't feel Him present. Just the way it works. And I haven't read anybody that can give you an answer to that hasn't experienced that. Have you experienced that? Times when God is there, and other times, in fact, you approach the prayer and you say, wow, this is going to be, whoo, I got stuff to tell you. And he didn't there. Or am I exaggerating?
No.
Am I exaggerating?
No, you're not exaggerating, but you didn't use the word discipline.
I didn't use the word discipline.
No, you didn't.
I did not.
Why?
Why did I not? Well, I don't like the word. To begin, I really don't. Because it implies something you didn't want to do.
Yeah.
It implies something you felt you were made to do. Discipline, the author of the book on prayer also has a book on discipline. And it's an excellent book, but he sort of tries to get you to look at discipline differently than we think about. When you were in school, were you ever disciplined?
But discipline also is a sequence. Discipline is not necessarily a negative thing. Discipline is, did you say no?
All right, they're agreeing that discipline is not a negative thing.
No, it's not.
It's not, it's a positive
It's
thing.
very positive.
You are a disciplined, you're a pilot.
I'm a very disciplined person.
I understand that. If you weren't, you wouldn't be here.
I just read a book about Will Wright.
Uh-huh.
If anybody wants to read discipline and dedication, their father was a preacher. That is one of the best books you'll ever read.
This is a book about Orville and Wilbur Wright,
Yes.
and you recommend it.
Oh, it's David McCullough. It's historical. I mean, it just really, those people's lives, you can't imagine what they accomplished because of discipline.
Well, I can't disagree with that. My experience with discipline is my dad. Now,
It's a different discipline.
it's a discipline. Well, but wait, the word is the same. I can remember
Okay, Alan,
my.
bear and bear, you know, the same word.
But we call a sequence of courses in education a discipline.
I understand that too, and I'm all for you. Call the course in education a discipline. I can't, look, the thing I didn't understand, my brother and I were throwing the football in the living room. And he didn't catch it, and it hit my mother's crystal collection and broke a lot of it. Now, my father wasn't there, but when he got home, my mother told him about it. And he got furious, and I've never understood how he could be furious because he wasn't there. Does that make sense?
No.
And no, okay. And he disciplined us. And it was a ruler that he hit
I'd
us
say
with.
that's punishment, not discipline.
That's not discipline, that's punishment. Okay. Bottom line. If I weren't home and Spider broke a lot of stuff, or I wasn't home and my sons broke a lot of stuff, I'm not going to come home and get angry. I may punish them, but I wasn't there. I can't get furious. My brother put on his corduroy pants and put a book in the back, and my dad never knew it. I was the one who got disciplined, because I wasn't smart enough to add so I have a, yes, ma'am.
The church even calls prayer one of the disciplines of a religious life.
The church does call prayer one of the disciplines of a religious life. How many of you knew that? The great majority did not know that.
Well, I knew it, and I don't do it.
You have Methodist discipline. Have you ever read it? Okay. That's a discipline, all right. Well, this has been fun for me. I'm sorry that I would end it by saying that, but it has been because you've been participatory. Right?
Right.
And I thank you for that. We'll continue this next week with the prayer of examen, E-X-A-M-E-N, a Latin word that you should be familiar with. See you then.
Al,
Yes.
Yesterday, Joy and I were in a place, and then you're talking about singing that. It was a little, she was probably 11 years old, no music, and the little girl sang the most beautiful I've ever heard anybody sing. 11-year-old girl, she knew how to sing.
The national anthem.
No music.
When I was in junior high school, the teacher of music was Robert G. Lee, not Robert E. Lee. And he made a statement. Now, this is in the 1950s. He made a statement that said, the national anthem is the worst piece of music ever written. And I thought, oh, the class got me. Everybody's getting. This was in the days when you had to get under your desk because we're going to blow up the world kind of stuff. And so he was accused of being a communist and removed from being the teacher. Now, what did he mean? He meant this isn't a very well written piece of music. And it isn't. It's hard to play and it's very hard to sing. And so that's what he meant.
A big range.
But that's not what the class understood. And he lost his job. I don't ever know what happened to him, but it was all over the national anthem. Yesterday, that singer should have lost her job.
No, because it's a free country.
It is a free country, but don't you get tired of having somebody step on the cat? So, I did turn it off. I hate to get embroiled in this.
That's your freedom.
Will you cut off the camera and let me say goodbye?
Thank you.